Hi. Our book review today is going to be on Lone Star Nation by Richard Parker. This is Erin, Miss Mary, and myself. I'm Jerry. To kind of just get right into the book, it's an awesome book, actually. I really enjoyed reading it. As far as reading material goes or a textbook goes, what I really enjoyed about it is the fact that he added such a human element to the actual book. From the very beginning, he starts talking about his family, and all the way through the book, he very much interjects a lot of his where he started and where he is now, based on kind of the chronological of how he sees Texas growth, and really how it correlates with the growth of his own family, and a lot of just really interesting things. His girls growing up, his divorce, which, I want to still know why he got divorced, but that's not here nor there. But I really enjoyed it. That whole human element that he added, I thought was really great. Couple of the things that really stood out as far as Texas-related material. Really cool to understand the different migrations, how he broke it up. He says that we have six migration periods in Texas. The first two being basically Native Indian ancestors from Asia that came over. Then he goes into the third and fourth migration periods, which are Southerners from the American South. Then he goes into the fifth migration, which is Northern Southerners, that he refers to people like from California and the Midwest. And then into the sixth migration, which is where we are now, from 2005 to present day. And he really gives some amazing detail, which I would have never thought. But between 2005 and 2010, we've had 3.5 million people, million Americans migrate to Texas alone within that sixth migration, which is an astonishing amount of people, which also kind of, for those of you in Houston, understand why 290 is always backed up, and I-10, and why you can never seem to get home if you're not, even if you go to the grocery store, it takes you 45 minutes. But yeah, all them people want to come here. Another really big point that stood out for me just in general was that he said the largest challenge that Texas is going to face, amongst a couple of others, but really one that stood out, was water. We don't have, a lot of parts of Texas itself are always in a drought. Here in Houston, we don't really see it too often. So you always turn on the tap and water comes out, but there's a lot of different areas in Texas, Austin even being one, that will go months and months and months without rain. So really understanding what that's going to mean to Texas as a whole, as we continue to have this migration of millions and millions of people, is really how we're going to sustain that natural resource, which is so essential to our everyday life. Like I said, for us right now, you turn on the tap and you get water. What's it going to be like when we can't do that, or when it's limited to a certain time frame, or maybe, we go down to showering once a week. Whatever it is, it's one of those things that it presents a big challenge, and trying to come up with a policy or a strategy for what we're going to have to do to combat that is very interesting to me. So those are kind of a couple of points from my end. I know Aaron has a couple of things that he wants to add.
Okay. Thank you very much. So piggybacking on what you said, it has been that huge explosion in population, and it's worked itself out a couple of ways. One of the reason the book is called Lone Star Nation is that because of all the population growth, and with all the diversity and the rate of the change, he sees Texas as an economic powerhouse, not only now, but even more so in the future, with population, I think reaching, going past California mid-century,
Yeah.
having economies in the top six in the world compared to other countries. And being already being a huge exporter of technology. So then he's basically telling a tale of two Texases. But how do we go from the stereotypical Texas of all the folklore, and then making that transition into essentially a nation, and we'll get a feel for what America will be like because it'll be happening here first in Texas. And so one of the drivers of that is people are leaving the rural areas and moving to the cities. And he makes emphasis on that Texas triangle of Houston, San Antonio, San Antonio slash Austin, and Dallas. And that as population relocates to those areas, that it spurs innovation. And he goes off into a lot of interesting talk about Austin, how Austin, while it is the state capital politically, it reinvents itself as an area of innovation because people are moving there with an image of how they want life to be, and by being in that proximity, it's encouraging them to choose a life how they want to live it, and also pushing forward, lifestyle and technology. And he even made Austin. It was kind of funny because he made Austin sound like an adult Disneyland or Wonderland with expensive restaurants, concerts, things that people who are relatively young but don't be burdened with families and kids and live a certain lifestyle. Well, Austin is the place that they want to be. He also talks about the diversity in the cities, and so he even highlights, of course, the city growth, but as it bleeds into the suburbs. So he highlights like Missouri City, which often gets recognized as one of the most diverse counties in the nation and fastest growing. And so he highlights that change and how being tolerant of one another promotes that innovation. He does go off into education being a factor, and that an interesting anecdote is that Texas has no tuition cap, and so that is making education more of a luxury item as we grow population. And there are some very unique changes to the demographics of Texas as the population is having significant change. And I'll let you talk about that right now, Ms. Mary.
Yes, Parker speaks of the dominance of the Hispanics at this present time. He also indicates that we need to educate them or they're going to be chaos. Texas is a Republican state. It always has been. You look at cities like Harris County, Galveston, Brisbane, and Montgomery and Fort Bend, they're totally Republican. And in today's society, we have to realize which side is going to be the best as far as educating our children, educating our cultures, moving people from rural to urban counties. We all need to just come together as one and understand things that's going to be best for the country, going to be best for the economy, going to be best for politics-wise. And my friend Aaron is looking at the thing. I think he has something to say on that.
While I'm watching the time, make sure we're getting it all in there. Make sure we got so much to say that we don't want to go over our time limit. So in this 5.5 minutes that we have left, it was interesting how the book was written, and that while we talk about the migrations, there are a lot of things going on. Yeah, the migrations themselves, and then there's the personal stories. Yeah. And then he also takes a lot of road trips across the state as well. So he goes to visit, and you get this kind of geographic road map as you go across Texas. And he goes from the more rural areas of traditional West Texas, and he heads east, I believe. And so then we reach some of the more urban areas, and so those are all kind of interwoven to add a physical moving forward dynamic to the whole story of Texas moving forward.
He talks a lot about the change in the rural areas too. He goes back to him himself being in a metropolitan area and then moving to Texas is almost a step back to his childhood, to the days of him being in high school, and how much it's changed. But at the same time, he's happy to be back because of I guess that remembering kind of that old time and all the memories that he made with his family, fishing, etc., camping, and really how he is trying to teach his daughters that, but now things have grown so much and it's different. The girls are more modern. They're not so interested in eating at county fairs and experience that sort of small town feel and traditions, which I thought was really interesting because one of the things that me being from a metropolitan area and an entirely different country, to be honest, one of the things that I love about Texas is the fact that you still get that hometown feel in a big city. I don't feel that it's grown so far out of that, because I know one of the biggest highlights here in Houston is a livestock rodeo show. So it attracts thousands of people to come and eat what he describes as fair food. So the little anecdotes that he adds in there really do give it a human touch, which makes it a very fun read, because you can relate to a lot of what he says.
The book was very easy to read, and what I like about it, how he illustrates how in 2000 and mid-20s, we're going to have a population of California.
2050.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a population. We are steady growing. Houston is a city of diversity. Aaron, I believe you had something to say.
Yes, a couple things. One, he does go through some of the discrimination that has set, that America and Texas on another level had been a part of. Texas was a part of the Confederacy. Texas was a slaveholding state. And he does even talk about the very conscious effort that Texas made in the early 20th century with the Big State Fair to switch over and say, let's ignore that Southern history and let's embrace this pioneering spirit. And so seeing some of the, in this age of conspiracy theories, and we always, are wondering, are there conscious efforts to choose how the story of the world is told? And so we do see an effort that was done to get away from the negative connotations of being on the losing team of the Confederacy and everything associated with that, and changing how Texas was presented to the rest of the nation. Now, at the same time, women, Latinos, and African Americans were all disenfranchised and not allowed to participate at certain degrees. And that's what makes this story so important, because you fast forward through the various migrations, and as you get to the final migrations, which the latter one, which is the one that takes a turn away from being a Republican state, because we had Southerners who were conservative, Democrats, and later Republicans. Then you had the Midwesterners in another migration that came and solidified the Republican point of view, and then Texas has been locked into that, with Democrats putting up not much of a fight. However, with the demographic changes, the state is expected to go into that purple phase, and that's because of the growing Latino population and also the diversity of the mega cities, Houston in particular, where we're starting to see they are already going Democratic in a lot of elections, and so we have this purpleization of the state. And so that's a very interesting dynamic. And then going to what you were saying about the Hispanic population being the majority, with the Anglo population shrinking, education. Education is the number one issue that he likes to point out, and so he gives us two very different futures. One which is very scary, with gated communities of wealthy people holding out and protecting what they have with private policemen, and another one which is much more. I think you mentioned in class about having Latino mayors and politicians, and being more embracing of. But still taking opportunity of all the resources that we have here in Texas.
Yes, Latinos are being very outspoken at this time. And people need to realize that they have a space here in this country too. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we did it.
Have a
Good
good
job.
holiday.
All right, thanks.